Hello and welcome to another lecture. In the last lecture, we wrapped up on our foundation in Python. In today's lecture, we are going to start talking about the Django web framework and how this is the go-to framework for most web development. So let's first talk about what is Django and overall what does it mean to be a web framework. So Django is a Python-based web framework. So in short, a web framework provides you everything you need to build a web application or a website. So it is a software for programmers which we use to go ahead and build web services, websites, web APIs, many other things, anything that's web related. And in general, a framework it has its own rules and it has its own tools that helps us proceed with building a kind of application. Now, the kind of architecture that it supports, the Django framework, it's called MVT. So the Django framework, there are frameworks which have different architecture. MVC is one kind, but we will talk about that later. Right now we are dealing with MVT, which stands for Model View Template. So what is Model View Template? Let's break it down a bit. Model is the data representation and modeling. Like this is basically your whatever idea you have, whatever website or app you are going to make, the data that will back that certain website or app, that is the models, the data models. And we will talk more about this in the next lecture. But for now, this has everything to do with data. Now the next thing, view. The view is the business logic. So of course, if you're going to make a website or a web app, it's going to be doing something. It's for something. So if we look at the most popular websites, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, all these websites have a purpose. Spotify processes and displays music data. Facebook allows us to be social. So Facebook allows us to post things, manage images, text, friendships. So all these things are data. So the view is where the data modeling is used and stretched. So it's worked on. And then we have finally the template. The template is basically the front end. So here your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript come in. So this is the visualization. The view is the logic behind that visualization, behind that page. The template is the page itself. All right. Now, first thing I would like you to do is go ahead and make a folder, an empty folder on your desktop, and call it My Blog. We are going to be using this to create our first Django project. Once you have that done, let's go ahead and open up a new terminal. So in this terminal, I'm going to first install the Django framework. And yes, you have to use the pip command. For those of you who are unfamiliar with pip, pip is the Python package manager. So any library or framework that is in Python that we'd like to install, this must be done via pip. So let's say pip. And okay, if you're on Windows, use pip. But if you're on Linux or Mac, make sure you use pip3 because that is the pip for Python 3. pip3 install Django. Now because I have Django already installed, it will say requirement already satisfied. All right. Now that we have Django installed, we have a command that we can access. The command is going to be, so we've done first step, create an empty folder. Now, and we've also done the second step to create a Django, to go ahead and do the installation for Django. Now, we are going to create a project and an app, and I will explain individually what these two things are. So let's say django-admin start project core dot. Now, for those of you wondering, why did I put a dot? The dot means that I want Django to create the project folder inside of this blog, my blog folder. So I don't want a folder within a folder. I basically want the content to be generated inside of our my blog folder, which is empty. So if we run this, And you can see that it generated that folder. It didn't create a folder within a folder. It generated the folder right there and the management file. Again, we will talk about this shortly. Now, you can see we have some files over here, and each of them has a role to play. The best thing about Django is all these things they come pre-built for you. So your setup is ready to go. And I will talk more about this in a moment. So this is something called being batteries included. So let's now create the app. So django-admin start app and then app. You don't need to put a dot here, just run it. And there we go. And you have some files over here too. Now what's going to happen is we're going to talk about individually each file. Now to differentiate the folder, the app folder is just, you could say, how Django works is there are logical components. So for example, if I'm making a social network website, I would have one app for users to handle everything user related. I would have another app for handling social media posts and images. I would have another app for managing chats and friendships. So just like that, the Django project is structured. You have various apps, or you can do everything in one app. It entirely depends on how organized you want to be. And so right here, this app is going to have our data models and business logic. And as for the project folder is your configuration. It is, you could say, the heart of the initial Django project you are doing. So let's start with the project folder. Let's talk about its contents. ASGI and WSGI, so asynchronous gateway interface and web service gateway interface, web server gateway interface. These two files, do not touch them at all. So these have to do with running your web server. So one starts the web server, the other manages the incoming and outgoing requests. So do not tamper with these, because these will affect your application and most likely make you run into an error if you tamper with it. So just leave it as it is. Settings.py. Okay, very important. The settings.py file, what it does is it has everything related to your project, all the settings, as its name says. So first off, we have debug equals true. I'll show you what this does in a moment, but basically this is so that you can debug with ease. If you get any errors or issues, you can always debug, have this set to true, and make sure you can just easily solve whatever you are trying to. Next, you have allowed hosts. So after you set up your project like we have, make sure you set this to this. This will allow this application's web server to start on any machine. So whether it's your machine, a friend's machine, an external machine. The next step, after you set allowed hosts, now you have to register any apps that you have made. So let's register our app. They have to be the name that you kept. So we are letting our Django project know that the app folder right here is a part of this Django project. So in order for the app's data models and logic and everything to work, you have to register it in this app registry. And what I was saying about Django having pre-built things. So over here we have middleware. Middleware is like some, you could say, in the middle of a request, there are some checks. So these are mostly used for security. As you can see, Django has pre-built security measures for your website or web app. But again, these are just the base security measures. Of course, there's always more additional security steps you could take, but no need to worry about that right now for this lecture. Next, you have to create a templates folder. So let's do that. Let's say templates. So again, what I'm walking you through right now is the setup. Whenever you have an idea of a website or an app, this is how you will set up. So we've created the templates folder. As you can see, it's right in my blog folder. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to register that here too. So all you have to do is say basedir/templates. And what is basedir? Basedir is right here for you. So this is just something pre-initialized by Django that lets you know what is your root path, like what is the home path for your Django project. And yes, our templates folder is right in the home path. So we need to say, okay, base_dir with template. So this folder is where our HTML files will be. But again, there will be more on this later on. Okay, so allowed hosts, that's great. Installed apps, perfect. Templates folder set, excellent. Now this is where your database configuration is. We are going to be using the classic SQLite database. It's easier to manage and perfect for getting you started. And again, coming back to security, for authentication, you have various password countermeasures ready. So you have some password security and validation set up here, pre-built, offered by Django to you. And last but not least, you have internationalization. So if you want to change the language code, if you want to change the time zone of the data when it's created, you can do that and set that all from here. So your settings is your main configuration file. Okay, now let's talk about the app folder. So the app folder, this is where you'll be working mostly. So first up, we have the only three files you need to be aware of are models, views, and admin. The models, and again, what I was talking about, MVT, this is that part, that phase of the architecture. So models, this is where we will define our data models. So for example, social media post, image, user account. So the things that, the data that will make up our application, that is what we will be defining here, like the schematic of the data, or schema of the data, or you could say the design of the data, however you want to say it. Next up, you have the views. Okay, so the views, again, going back to the architecture phase, that's phase 2, view. And this is where you are going to write code. So this is where you are going to write what should the behavior be. Like when a user goes to a page, what should happen? What should the user be allowed to do? And so on. And finally, you have the admin. So the admin is where you can go ahead and use the Django admin panel and register the data models. So the other cool thing about Django is that it comes with a pre-built admin panel. So there is a ready-made administration panel which you can access, and whatever data models you create here, you can register them in this admin.py file. And from there, you can see all the data that is flowing through your website or web app. So that's a really, you could say, convenient thing that Django offers us, an admin panel to manage and see everything that's going on. So that's it for today's lecture. So we set up a Django project. Go ahead and try this yourself. Watch this video again and try setting up a Django project just like we did. Try this 2-3 times yourself. It can be a bit of a, you could say, long learning curve, but give it a try. Remember that once you try it yourself, the more you try it, the more you'll get used to it. So follow the steps in this video and you should be fine. And I will then see you in the next lecture. Thank you. Bye.